So, folks, as a lot of you know, we have been for a while in an escalating um, road or staircase or ramp up, if you will, into a very scary situation when it comes to ICE and CPB or CBP. I always get the B and the P mixed up, but regardless, being able and empowered by this particular administration to go and round up people who they suspect of being undocumented. And one of the issues here is that, well, it seems like they're doing this in an effort to just skip any kind of trial date. And what I mean by that is, well, we've got a lot of groundwork having been laid over the last month and a half to basically justify skipping due process, skipping days in court, because it's just too onerous for the deportation system to actually go to court and prove that the people they're trying to deport are the people that they say they are, you know? It's just too onerous to have evidence against people that you want to destroy their lives. And part of this is, you can find here, Trump to declare illicit fentanyl weapon of mass destruction per draft executive order. They want to basically manufacture a crisis when it comes to immigrants in this country. They want to argue that people in this country who are not, native-born citizens are in fact targets, are valid targets of suspicion and oppression. And this article by Marissa Kabas is very great. It's good stuff. They got their hands on this draft executive order, basically declaring that, like, anyone caught trafficking, fentanyl is trafficking a weapon of mass destruction. And they're trying to argue that this is then grounds to take measures against Mexico and Canada in particular. And it's bad. And one of the things that you are seeing now is that the Trump administration and ICE in particular are targeting citizens from outside the United States who are legally able to be here, either on a visa or on a green card or for studies. Earlier today, we talked about the case of Rumeysa Ozturk, who was just disappeared off the street by ICE. In fact, we'll here quickly watch that footage again because it is quite disturbing. And she was disappeared because she wrote an op-ed like a year or so ago, critical of, and the op-ed was not entirely focused on like pro-Palestine sentiments, but it included them in there as part of a larger narrative directed towards the university. For that, this PhD student here legally was abducted. Yes, she co-wrote the article. Bunch of masked goons walked up and disappeared her.
Yep. We're going to take it right to the car. Come on. I'll show you everything. Okay. Sure. Yep. You're fine.
I understand you. Scary. Where the police? Where the police?
Where the police?
Yeah, you don't look like it. Why are you hiding your faces?
Why are you hiding your face?
Yep. Take everything.
Why are you hiding their faces? Your faces. They all adjust their masks to fully cover their face. We understand this is scary. We're the police. They are not the police. They are ICE.
Yep, I'm back with the doctor.
Yeah, we're gonna take a look. I see some faces here. How do I know this is the police? It's like a thing. It looks like it.
And then they disappear her into this van. And for approximately 12 hours, no one knew where she was. Her lawyer did not know where she was until she appeared in an ICE database about 5 hours ago. And it showed that she had been transported from Somerville, Massachusetts to a facility in Louisiana that was 1,400 miles away. That's for, by the way, co-writing an op-ed in her college newspaper. Other cases, however, and we did an entire segment on that one just today, but other cases are the case of Jasmine Mooney from Canada, specifically Vancouver, who was imprisoned for 12 days by border officials and ICE. Here is her story.
I do not wish it upon anyone.
Do you regret going across the border now?
I mean, yeah, of course. Like, if I knew that that was even a possibility, like even a possibility that that could happen, I would have never in a million years gone there. Like, I'm telling you, from the second I got there to now, like, I can't even process what just happened because there was no heads up. Next thing you know, I'm taken, and for 2 weeks haven't been told anything, moved in different cells, sleeping on cement, sleeping in different jail cells. What I was told was I should have applied through the consulate, and because of my situation, they had to send me back to Canada. They said, you're not in trouble, you're not a criminal, you didn't do anything wrong. And then I sat down and I was looking to book flights home, because that's what I assumed that I was supposed to do, that I would just show them that I'm going home, and then next thing you know, I was taken. My entire experience, everyone in there was like, as soon as I would speak, they're like, whoa, wait, where are you from? I'm like, Canada. They're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I don't know. Everyone thought I was from Russia. It was hilarious. So I just spent the rest of my time trying to console and help as many women as I could, because there were some, like there was one girl that was in there for 10 months. So 2 weeks compared to 10 months, how am I supposed to complain about anything, right?
God. It's really, I mean, it really comes home, you know? Like, I don't know. I don't really have words for that. This is really sad. It's really sad. It's really awful, because there are tons of people like her, you know, who are Hispanic and who are trapped in this system for months, 10 months, being shuffled around, sleeping on concrete. The fascism is here, folks. So under Biden, yeah, we need to get rid of ICE. The difference here is that people in ICE detention under Biden were undocumented. They were people who, for various reasons, lacked documentation to be here. What we're seeing now is an escalation from that under the pretext of, oh, we have to get anyone who's doing criminality. We have to get anyone who is doing crimes, who is also here. You know, whether it's rounding up refugees or it's rounding up people with green cards who have like a small violation of some kind in their legal history. Whatever it is, they're coming after folks. And I mean, this is one of this story in particular is haunting. A green card holder from New Hampshire interrogated at Logan Airport and detained. Wild stuff here. A New Hampshire man with a green card was detained by immigration officers at Logan Airport and is being held by a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement at the Donald W. Wyatt Detention Facility in Central Falls, Rhode Island. Fabian Schmidt's family said they are unsure of why he is being held. They said he has a recently renewed green card and no active issues in court. Schmidt had been visiting Luxembourg and flew back to the U.S. on Friday. His partner had gone to pick him up at Logan Airport and waited 4 hours before calling authorities. It was just said that his green card was flagged, said Astrid Senior, his mother. She said she didn't hear from her son directly until Tuesday when she learned he'd been hospitalized. Senior described Schmidt being violently interrogated at Logan Airport for hours and being stripped naked, put in a cold shower by two officials, and put back onto a chair. She said Schmidt told her immigration agents pressured him to give up his green card. She said he was placed on a mat in a bright room with other people at the airport with little food or water, suffered sleep deprivation, and was denied access to his medication for anxiety and depression. He hardly got anything to drink. And then he wasn't feeling very well and he collapsed, said Senior. He was transported by ambulance to Massachusetts General Hospital. He didn't know it at the time, but he also had influenza. On Tuesday, Schmidt was transported to the regional headquarters for ICE in Burlington, Massachusetts, and then transferred to the Wyatt facility. The family, including his partner, who is a cardiologist in Nashua, have acquired attorneys and have been working with the German consulate in hopes of having him released on bail. Schmidt and his mother moved to the U.S. in 2007 and received green cards in 2008. He moved from California to New Hampshire in 2022. He is an electrical engineer with a partner and an 8-year-old daughter who are both U.S. citizens. Schmidt had a misdemeanor charge for having marijuana in his car in 2015, which his mother said was dismissed after laws changed in California around marijuana possession. He missed a hearing about the case in 2022 since a notice was never forwarded to his new address. Senior mentioned that Schmidt is successfully recovering from alcoholism and had a DUI that he's completely worked through and paid off from around 10 years ago. They're literally just grabbing people off their travel routes, torturing them until they need to be hospitalized because they are not full citizens or are instead legally here on green cards. So, like, this is where we're at. And I want you guys to understand, if they can do that to undocumented people, and they can do that to visa holders, and they can do that to green card holders, they can do that to citizens. There is nothing preventing that, because in each one of these cases, do you remember hearing about a day in court? Do you remember hearing about how like the authorities taking him in front of a judge and making their argument for what laws he had broken, what he had done? No. This is a complete abdication of due process rights. They are ignoring your right to a trial. And they are saying that instead of following any kind of legal guidelines, they can just arrest people that they think are criminals without any evidence and without having to argue it in front of a judge. No warrants, nothing like that. ICE are indeed a form of the modern day brown shirts. Yes. Papers, Please was fucking prophetic. Now, if you're wondering, okay, but like, I'm a US citizen, like, this is clearly not going to affect me. I want to draw your attention to an article in the New York Times from about 6 days ago, a week ago-ish. Administration officials believe order lets immigration agents enter homes without warrants. They're trying to make the argument that they do not need warrants to enter your house and search it. This is a complete and utter violation of constitutional rights. There is no other way around that. It undermines fundamental protections that are recognized in the Fourth Amendment and in the Due Process Clause, says Christopher Slobogin, a law professor at Vanderbilt University. This is, of course, related to the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Keep that in your mind, because it's going to become key to everything that is happening going forward. We're going to be talking a lot about the Alien Enemies Act, folks. Okay? We're going to be talking a lot about that in the coming days. Okay? Now, a couple of the other things here. In response to these unreasonable detentions and these torturing of different foreign nationals, well, Canada, Germany, other countries, I believe the Netherlands came out and issued travel advisories for folks looking to go to the United States. This is Canadian MP Charlie Angus.
Over the last 3 months, our nation has faced an unprecedented threat from our nearest neighbor, a threat to our borders, a threat to our sovereignty, our threat to our very right to exist as an independent democratic nation. Donald Trump thought we were going to be an easy mark, that we'd be a pushover. Oh, how wrong he was. And now Canada standing up to him has made Canada the front line in the defense against the MAGA ideology. So no wonder Donald Trump and MAGA are feeling pretty angry at Canada. But what concerns me is the targeting of Canadian citizens who are crossing the border to work or to visit. We have seen too many stories of citizens being pulled out of airport lines and being fingerprinted and deported as though they were criminals. Citizens being kidnapped through illegal detention by ICE. And it's not just Canadians. We see the attack on backpackers, students, doctors, professors. I am here today to say to Canadians to avoid travel to the United States if at all possible, and to call our government to stand up for our Canadian citizens who are being denied their rights by arbitrary detention in the United States today. Canada must stand up for our citizens and for the rule of law. Because what we're seeing, for example, with cops pulling over the folk duo Cassie and Maggie to harass them for being Canadian is not the actions of a democratic nation. People whose phones are being seized and searched for any kind of incriminating evidence that they're somehow progressive or woke. That's not the actions of a democratic nation.
Absolutely,
That
Faith.
is the creep of totalitarianism. That is the creep of fascism, and we need to call that out. Over the last 3 months, our nation has faced an unprecedented threat from our nearest neighbor.
Yeah, it loops here, but like it's bad. If anyone wants that, here you go. Here you go. This guy thinks democracy matters. It does, in fact. One of the number one ways to resist tyranny is to stand alongside institutions in solidarity as they battle fascist overreach and outlasting the bastards. That is, in fact, one of the most effective ways of staving off a fascist takeover of your country, according to people like Timothy Snyder, who study this for a living, you know? And like, this guy is right. Democracy still matters in Canada. Canada is democratic. So, you know, part of what we have to do is we have to persevere. We persevere, we stand by our institutions, and then we rebuild once the death cult has burnt itself out. That is one of the strategies, you know? Didn't the US recently get put on a human rights watch list? Oh man, the US has been on human rights watch lists for like decades. Now, additionally, folks, I think we have to talk just real quick. And I know I've talked about this a lot on this channel, but I do think it is important and a signal of where the Supreme Court is in relation to Donald Trump, because that is going to be increasingly important as these legal cases against these summary deportations continue. And that is that Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, did something exceptionally rare about a week ago. And that thing was he put out a statement. John Roberts does not usually just put out a statement to admonish the government. That is an exceptional act from him. And it reads, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. And that is the entirety of his statement. Okay? Which doesn't sound like much. But we're in territory where, like, we need to recognize that that is John Roberts signaling that, like, the federal government needs to knock it off. Because what they've been doing alongside these deportations is that any of the judges that intervene and move to block these deportations via temporary restraining orders or preliminary injunctions, they are trying to call for like the impeachment of judges. They're trying to intimidate judges with violence and threats. And what Chief Justice John Roberts is doing here is basically saying, you guys cut that shit out. You have to stop. And yeah, I think, Narodia, you are correct in that John Roberts is not firmly in the fascist camp. He is in the neoconservative, like warmongering corporate camp, which unfortunately for us is the moderate position on the Supreme Court. So we're not out of the woods when it comes to what direction the Supreme Court might go, but seeing John Roberts signal on this against the government is good, because it means that he is not as likely to simply capitulate to the fascist power grab that is currently unfolding. He likes his power, and he wants to keep it. And that works into our favor, which is horrible for me to say. It is galling for these words to come out of my mouth because John Roberts is like the guy who put us in this situation. He's like he's like the root of a lot of these problems. But he might be in a position to potentially slap down a potential fascist power grab. And in this lone circumstance, if he does stand firm, I'll take it. I'll take it. Okay. So with that, folks, we've finished part 1 of all of this with one last addendum. And this is where we get really, really scary. All right. This is where we start talking more about the Alien Enemies Act of 17. Was it 1789 or 1798? Oh no. Oh no! 1798. Nailed it. Here's Donald Trump saying what he believes that law being invoked means.
President, do you think you have the authority, the power to round up people, deport them, and then you're under no obligation to a court to show the evidence against them?
Well, that's what the law says, and that's what our country needs, because we were, unfortunately, they allowed millions of people to come into our country, totally unvetted, totally unchecked. So you ought to ask, did he have the authority?
President.
Yeah, so this is basically the president saying he has the unilateral authority to have people seized and deported and punished without a trial, without any obligation to the rule of law, without any obligation to their constitutional rights, without any hint of any of those things that are near and dear to what makes America a functional state and a democracy. Okay? Penny Ann T, thank you very much for the compliment and the extra effort it took to make it. But yeah, this guy's nuts. This guy is Mad King George. Okay? This is we're in some truly heinous and uncharted waters here. In part 2, we're going to talk more about the legal journey of where things currently stand in the courts related to the Alien Enemies Act, because it has been an odyssey. So all of this is just kind of to give you guys the background for why this might be the thing that goes to the Supreme Court and gets decided by the Supreme Court. And this could be kind of the trial balloon for whether or not we have constitutional rights at all. Kind of a big deal. But with that, part 1 done. Whew. All right. We have now been going for over 4 hours, chat.